360 Sports Network, 3S Network on Twitter. This is the top 20 running back countdown, or count up. With me tonight, we have Alex, the Saint Delaverson, and James, the Value Man Dotson. And of course, I am the mad scientist. Mr. Dotson, how are you tonight?
Hey, doing well. Another night. That means one night close to the fantasy football and the NFL and everything football starting. So it's definitely a good night out here.
How about you, Alex?
Oh, I'm ready to roll. I'll tell you what, I have such a love-hate relationship with fantasy football. I love dissecting it, love talking about it, but I always hate my team about 6 weeks into the season. So I'm going to enjoy it while it lasts, but I'm ready to roll.
Fantasy football is every man's jealous mistress.
Exactly.
With that said, let's talk running backs.
Let's talk running backs. I, again, am the keeper of the official list. What we've done is we've compiled, based on our 3 predictions, as well as our friend Mr. Jim Blues, the Lost Cause there from Fantasy Football Toolkit. He's provided his top 20 rankings as well. And then combining that with our projected stats and what our customizable cheat sheets on 360sportsnetwork.com, what they've come up with. And we put them all together and we come up with a consensus pick. And what we have starting at the top of the running backs is almost a unanimous selection. All 3 of us actually have him as our number 1 running back, and that's LeSean McCoy. And after last year's season, Greg, I guess you really can't argue with that, can you?
You cannot argue with that whatsoever. You know, the Chip Kelly offense just suits Mr. McCoy to the T. And I look for big numbers. I'm actually projecting close to 2,000 yards rushing this year out of Mr. McCoy.
Oh, wow, that's some bold predictions, Alex. Do you agree with that, or can we really expect that much out of McCoy?
You know what? I was actually thinking about that before the show, and in Chip Kelly's high-octane offense, he could do it. And people have to remember, too, LeSean McCoy's been the most productive running back, in my opinion, the last 3 years for football. Now, a lot of people are also kind of tripping because of the addition of Darren Sproles. Here's my thing. I think Darren Sproles will actually be a decent fantasy pickup down the road, but I just think the workload for LeSean McCoy, there's going to be enough of it for him, if that makes sense. It's not like he's playing in an offense by committee. Sproles might take away some third down plays for him, but if you're looking for a running back that could potentially break that 2,000-yard mark, it could be McCoy, and we have to thank Chip Kelly's high-octane offense for that. So I'm kind of with the mad scientist on this one. I'm not saying he's going to do it. I'm saying don't be surprised if he's going to make a push for it.
Now, you pointed out there's 2 issues that people have when picking McCoy as their number 1 running back and in pretty much every league format than your number 1 overall. One is the addition of Sproles. You kind of alluded to it, that there's going to be plenty of touches to go around. It's also very evident that both will be in the backfield together for some plays, which will make things very interesting. The other thing that people worry about is that, well, now you have a full year's worth of tape to look at this Chip Kelly offense in the NFL, and that defenses are going to be better accustomed to it and know how to defend it. So those are the reasons maybe why you don't pick McCoy first, but I think that those are very minor reasons because it's obvious, even before Chip Kelly was there, LeSean McCoy was a beast. And he's continued to be a beast under the Chip Kelly system. I don't see that changing this year. I mean, yeah, 2,000 yards, that's possible, maybe not probable. I honestly think his stats may decrease a little bit, especially in yards, but still, compared to everybody else, he's, in my book, way light years ahead of the rest of the pack.
I would have to agree with that. He reminds me of Adrian Peterson before Adrian Peterson got injured.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, again, and that's the injury bug, and we're going to say injury so many times tonight, you're going to get sick of it, but
Ouch!
Injury is
I'm
something
injured.
that...
I'm injured.
Yeah, another one. Hey, another running back gets injured while we're in the middle of the show. That's about the way it works with running backs in the NFL. You almost need to take that risk, especially with these top guys, because that's just the way it is. So we all agree that McCoy is their number 1. Actually, when you look at our projected stats, though, based on a standard league, believe it or not, Jamal Charles actually has the slight edge in the in our cheat sheets guide as the number 1 spot. But you can almost say 1A and 1B. It's kind of like a personal preference. Alex, why do you pick McCoy over Charles?
I think it has a lot to do in terms of pass catching and, straight up traditional running out of the backfield. I like Chip Kelly's offense. I know what McCoy can do. Now, the thing is with Jamaal Charles, between him, McCoy, and Adrian Peterson, this was really hard for me. You talked about 1A, 1B. I kind of have 1A, 1B, and 1C. And I actually gave Peterson the nod just because, he had a quote, down year last year, even though he was hurt. And he only had, 1,266 yards rushing, and people consider that a down year. But the thing with Jamaal Charles you have to remember is he's projected to go first in, I think, most mock drafts. And I think the last time a running back has finished number 1 from the previous year and remained number 1 into the year after was with LaDainian Tomlinson in 2006 and 2007. So I guess just from a pure statistical, what are the chances? Looking at recent history, since 2007, the number 1 rated running back actually has not ended as the number 1 rated running back in the NFL. So I just kind of went with that a little bit. So I kind of went with the odds on that one, and that's why I put LeSean McCoy at number 1.
Yeah, I hear you there. And Jamaal Charles kind of had, you think it's a breakout year because it kind of came out of nowhere. He actually decreased by over 200 rushing yards, but his reception total doubled and his receiving yards doubled, and especially touchdowns. That was the big thing. His touchdown total on the ground jumped from 5 to 12, and in the air he got another 7 compared to his 1 and 0 in the previous 2 years. So his pass-catching ability is what's going to be huge for Charles. A lot of people see Charles as the bust number 1 pick, like you said, Alex, and that's just kind of been the way it is. I still think he's definitely going to put up solid numbers. The Adrian Peterson quote-unquote down numbers compared to a previous year's absolutely monstrous year. You can't go wrong with any of these really top 3 or 4 guys. If you're in the top 3 or 4 and you have the ability to be able to choose one of these guys, honestly, it's knowing your league. If you're in a PPR league, stay away from Peterson compared to the other 3 or 4 up there. It's because he doesn't catch as much. But other than that, you really can't go wrong with any of these guys, right, Greg?
Yeah, I have to tend to agree to that. Also, you have to take a look at your draft position, too, where you're drafting, and you have to take a look at the value that's out there. Now, if you're given the option of either a Jamaal Charles or a Megatron, that's going to be something where you're going to have to sit down and kind of weigh that out. And once again, this is the running back show and not the wide receiver show. But, and this is the big but in the room right now, Jamaal Charles's numbers, are they comparable to that of, let's say, somebody who's at the top end in another position? And that's where you start getting into the dissection, and that's where, when you look at LeSean McCoy versus a Megatron versus a Jamaal Charles versus a Megatron, that's where you see the separation.
Right. You definitely see the separation in most projections, especially between McCoy. Even Charles seems to have a good separation compared to Megatron on most projections. Anywhere in the 3 through 8 range in running backs, though, you can definitely make that argument. Right now at number 3, we do have Adrian Peterson, but he is pretty much dead even with Matt Forte. And I really think the difference between these 2 guys, who's 3, who's 4, or 4 and 5, depending on where you rank everybody else, is all based on your league and based on pass catching. Because Matt Forte, for example, last year caught 74 passes. Adrian Peterson, on the other hand, only caught 29 passes. That's a huge difference, and I think that's all based on league preference with which guy you go between 3 and 4. Greg, you put, actually we all, no, Greg has Forte above Peterson. Alex, you and I have it the other way around. Is it really, though, just based on the league, you think, Greg?
No, I look at it based upon the team and based upon who's under center. Forte, even though he's got Jay Cutler under center, the Chicago Bears team is a much better offense than the Minnesota Vikings offense. And that means a lot, especially, when you're looking at running back numbers and you're looking at their opportunities. Yes, Adrian Peterson is a quintessential overachiever, no doubt about it. And so is Matt Forte. But when you take a look at these numbers and you take a look at the opportunities that Matt Forte has, Matt Forte is a better pick in my book, and that's why I have him ahead of Adrian Peterson. Plus, and this is something you have to remember, Adrian Peterson is coming off a surgery for the third straight season. He's gimpy.
He's also 29 years old. Don't forget about that.
Yeah,
Now, Alex,
he's
having
also a
Bridgewater,
cyborg. This is not just any other running back we're talking about.
Okay, yeah, he's got a third eye, and he blinks horizontally. Okay, so what?
He's a 6'2", 225-pound beast. And if there's anyone I'm gonna take my chances with coming off an injury, it's Adrian Peterson. And
now, does having Bridgewater, Alex, is that going to help or hurt him, having a rookie quarterback?
This is actually something I thought about coming into the show. I mean, look at, the Steelers in 2004 when Ben Roethlisberger was a rookie. Roethlisberger's team picked up the slack. They had a good running game. I don't think really Peterson's going to miss much. I don't think Peterson's going to miss a beat here. And, any other running back, it's a different story. But the fact that this is Adrian Peterson, the fact that he's unlike any other running back in terms of, his build, talent, just overall production, it's not like we're arguing if, Eddie Lacy or Matt Forte or Deshaun Marino is going to have the same impact. This is Adrian Peterson. But I actually want to mention something Greg said earlier. He said it actually does matter what offense you're in. And he's talking about how great the Bears' offense was. And for a lot of people who are actually, I don't want to say sleeping on Jamal Charles, but kind of have him down on their draft boards, one thing that kind of gets lost here is the coaching. Andy Reid has a long, successful track record with coaching fantasy-relevant quarterbacks, or running backs, excuse me. So with Jamal Charles, that's something to look at here. Andy Reid will not let Jamal Charles, I don't want to say slip away, but he's going to keep him fantasy relevant. And I even think the same thing with Matt Forte. Mark Tressen's offense in Chicago fits perfect for Matt Forte. So when I think of who's going to be consistent this year, I actually do, and I'm probably in the minority here, actually do look at who's coaching them and what system they're in.
All right. Well, very interesting in the fact that, the four guys we've mentioned, pretty much in almost every standard league that you look at, these are your top main four running backs that almost everybody would agree. Any one of these four, you should be happy with getting those picks. The one guy who's about there and possibly making the break-in to make that instead of a top four, make it a top five, is Eddie Lacy. Now, Greg, you're really high on Lacy compared to the rest of us. I'm personally worried about the sophomore slump possible happening. Why do you like Eddie Lacy so much?
Well, I mean, I'm looking at his production toward the end of the season when he was injured, and this guy was in beast mode pretty much throughout the entire season itself. He really didn't have any, well, let's put it this way. He had maybe one bad game, but the rest of the time he played, he was basically overachieving, and he was actually doing a lot of this stuff with Aaron Rodgers being injured. I look at this offense now in Green Bay. It's a balanced offense. Yes, it's a pass-first offense, but that's going to be great for Eddie Lacy because what that does is that allows him to get between the tackles and to make things happen the way he does. So I just look at this offense and the way Eddie Lacy produced last year. I don't fear the sophomore slump with this cat. I think he's going to have I'm looking at about 1,800 yards with this guy.
Very true. Now, Alex, you have him at 5 to 6 is where most of the projections will put him, and that's where I have him at 6. Blues as well at 6. What is going to keep him from breaking into that top 5?
I think people are actually worried about his quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, and what I mean by that is, Eddie Lacy, he's in the passing offense now. Is the workload going to be there? They're not going to rely on him so much anymore. I actually think that helps Eddie Lacy because there won't be 8 guys in the box anymore. And so I'm not as worried about that as other people are. And I actually do encourage people, like Greg does, to be high on Eddie Lacy. So remember when Rodgers went down last year with that broken collarbone? Eddie Lacy did wonderful. If I'm a fantasy owner, I'm taking a shot on Eddie Lacy.
So there you have our top 5: McCoy, Charles, Peterson, Forte, Lacy. Those 5 really are strong anywhere, and what we just said with Lacy especially, a lot of people are iffy on him, and he can drop to the 8 or 9 spot in that first round, and if so, that's an absolute steal to get a guy who could potentially be the number 1 or number 2 back in the entire league. A lot of people worry about that sophomore slump for obvious reasons. Moving forward to our number 6 through 10 spots, we have in 6 through 10, Marshawn Lynch at the 6th spot, DeMarco Murray at the 7, Le'Veon Bell at the 8, Arian Foster at the 9, and Doug Martin at the 10. In this 6 through 10 range, let's start with Alex. Which one of these guys to you could possibly be the guy who would like jump up into that top 3 or 4 in terms of their production this year? Which one do you like the best?
I'd have to say Le'Veon Bell from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, I'm talking about the Le'Veon Bell that finished the end of the year. And now people look at his 3.5 yards of carry and kind of think to themselves, I don't see what's so special about this guy. But when I think of Le'Veon Bell, I think of the Week 16 game against the Packers, where he rushed for 124 yards on 26 carries and scored a touchdown. And it's also worth pointing out that over the last 6 weeks of the season, Bell's yards per carry stats were a full half-yard higher than his final season average. So if Bell continues on that momentum, there's no reason to think he can't sneak into the top 5 running backs at the end of the year. So again, this is all pending if the Steelers' line stays healthy, and that is a big if. But I really love what Le'Veon Bell can do. I know some people worry about Doug Martin, but the question is, or LeGarrette Blount, but the question was, which one of these backs can make a big jump? And you got to keep an eye on Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah, you said it right there. There's some speculation that LeGarrette Blount could actually beat Le'Veon Bell out for the starting job, and he might take away some goal line carries. That's something to keep your eye on as we're going through the rest of the preseason, the first round of preseason games happening here this weekend. Just keep your eye on all that for sure. Greg, in your pick, out of those 5 guys we have, which one seems to be the biggest breakout potential, or the one that you would most likely go for?
Well, you know what? I'd love to say Le'Veon Bell, but I'm going to have to go with Marshawn Lynch on this one here. Marshawn Lynch, and once again, going back to the argument that we talked about a little bit earlier about Chicago and, comparing Chicago's offense to Minnesota's offense, you have to take a look at the offense that Marshawn Lynch is operating under up in Seattle right now. Marshawn Lynch had 36 receptions for 316 yards and 2 receiving touchdowns last year. Okay, now this is interesting. Russell Wilson is that new prototype of quarterback that's going to be utilizing Lynch as a receiver as well as the running back. And the 36 receptions was the second highest in his career, where he had 48 in his second season at Buffalo. Okay, so with all that being said, I see Lynch as a more complete package, only because he is the featured back. We don't have LeGarrette Blount lurking behind the scenes here in this situation here. Now, with LeGarrette Blount and Le'Veon Bell, yeah, that's kind of reminiscent of the New York Giants' thunder and lightning approach that they had way back in the days when Tiki Barber was playing football with the Giants. But looking at this, I think Marshawn Lynch has, a better upside where he could actually be in that top 5, and only because of the creativity of the Pete Carroll offense.
Well said, well said. Now, for me, out of those 5, I'm really a huge DeMarco Murray fan, and I have to take this with a grain of salt because last year he missed 2 games, and that was the best he's ever done in terms of injury. He only played 13 in his rookie season, 10 the year after that, 14 last year. So he's definitely an injury concern, which makes it tough to draft a guy like that high. I understand that. But at the same time, he's playing in an offense where they need to score and score a lot. And even with missing 2 games, he still had over 1,400 total yards and had a total of 10 touchdowns. Those are some pretty big numbers, and there's really nobody behind him who's going to take away a significant number of touches. So I like DeMarco Murray as somebody who could potentially break out, especially if he makes it for a full year. But the reason why, out of all those 5, Marshawn Lynch is probably your best and safest pick. Here's the number of games played last year. I just mentioned DeMarco Murray only played in 14 of them. Le'Veon Bell played in only 13 out of 16. Arian Foster played in half the games, 8 out of 16. Doug Martin played in 6 out of 16. Now, how many did Marshawn Lynch play in? Every single one of them. That could be the difference between winning and losing. So if you need a good, solid guy and you want to make a splash, not with the big numbers, but with the consistent week-in, week-out performance, Marshawn Lynch is definitely the best route to go, and that's why he's the top of that group of 5. All right, let's move down to the next set. 11 through 13, all some very similarities here. We got Monty Ball at number 11, Giovanni Bernard at number 12, and Zach Stacy number 13. A lot of guys, all 3 of them going into their second year. Again, you have to worry about the potential of a sophomore slump, if any of that could potentially happen. Monty Ball jumps into a nice situation in Denver. Is Monty Ball really the best choice there at this point in the draft as the number 11? Greg, I know you're not a fan of him.
No, I'm really not. Monty Ball, yeah, he had an opportunity to shine last year a little bit. However, it was basically the No Sean Marino show, which, but once again, you're taking a look at that offense and the way Peyton Manning spreads that ball around, and you have a kind of an unknown entity in Monty Ball. Plus, when Monty Ball was in college, yes, he was a Heisman candidate, the whole 10 yards. You can make all those arguments. I just don't see him as making that big splash that somebody, let's say, like a Giovanni Bernard could make, or somebody. I'm just not saying. I would actually rank Alfred Morris higher than Monty Ball, to be honest with you.
Well, do you remember what I said earlier, that how we kind of overlook coaching and schemes and systems and all that? You know, Bernard is a perfect example here. The difference between him and Monty Ball is, they're obviously a pretty decent offense in Denver. I heard they're not so bad, but that is obviously a passing offense,
Right.
A very high octane offense. Where in Cincinnati, Bernard has a really big chance of shining Hugh Jackson's run-heavy offense.
Exactly.
And that's the whole difference here. And so that's why, and I still think Monty Ball is going to do really well. I really think he's going to do well. But, and probably the safest pick here probably would be Bernard, just because of the situation he's going into.
Yeah, all 3 of these guys scare me for different reasons. Monty Ball, the reason he didn't get on the field more last year was he couldn't pass block. He was a terrible pass blocker. That's why Moreno stayed in. Now there is no Moreno, so, well, either he's going to be giving up a lot of sacks, letting Peyton Manning get put on his butt, or they're going to find somebody else to do the job. And that's my fear, is that somebody else will take over the job for a majority of the time. Now, as for Bernard and Stacy, both of their teams drafted running backs decently early. Cincinnati got Jeremy Hill in the 2nd round. The Rams got Trey Mason, which I believe was in the 3rd round. So Zach Stacy especially, he was getting a bulk load of carries, and they even said it themselves, it was too many of them. So that kind of scares me with him, that maybe they're going to try to, back up a little bit on how much they gave him, which wouldn't surprise me whatsoever. So any one of these 3, they have the upside potential. We've all seen that. We've all mentioned it. We know that they all could. Monty Ball could go and break records like he did in college. Same with Gio Bernard, could go and extend his lead, and Stacy could go with 30 more carries per game again. But each one of these has a risk too. But then again, pretty much any running back at this point is going to carry some sort of risk, right?
Well, yeah, I would agree with that.
All right, well, after those top 12 or 13 running backs, it's kind of weird to say it, but really you kind of start getting very subjective in these picks, and it's kind of almost about a personal preference the rest of the way. I mean, no further proof, I guess, needed. Our 14 and 15, Alfred Morris and Reggie Bush, 2 complete polar opposites. I mean, Alfred Morris, who, if he's lucky, will get 10 catches in a year, versus Reggie Bush, who will put up 60 or 70 catches very easily for the year. So at that point, it's almost your preference on what guy you want, what your league is like, and just how much confidence you have in each sort of player and each team and what their scheme is. Those are 14 and 15. 16 through 20 are Andre Ellington at 16, Ryan Matthews at 17, a rookie Bishop Sankey at 18, Toby Gerhart in a new place at 19, C.J. Spiller, a guy who had a bad year, but we know what he can do, at 20. So you have lots of different types of players, a lot of variety here with these next few picks. Who really sticks out in that group as somebody who is going to drop through the rankings? When you're looking at this point in the draft, Greg, are you looking for somebody who will get the bulk load of the carries, say an Alfred Morris, a Ryan Matthews, maybe even you can say a Toby Gerhart, though we don't have much of a track record for him? Or are you looking for somebody who maybe is a PPR freak, someone like a Reggie Bush or a C.J. Spiller? What route would you rather go?
I'm actually looking for more of a PPR type player, to be honest with you, because really these running backs, you're looking at drafting these guys anywhere between the 8th round through the 10th round. And with that said, I mean, this is your best talent that's available between rounds 8 and round 10. And going through this, even if you're not in a PPR league, you're going to still garner some decent RB2 and RB3 potential from these guys.
Yeah, whether it's, some of these guys who will go as high as the 3rd or 4th round versus, they could easily slip down to the 6th, 7th, 8th round very easily. Pretty much, I'm in agreement with you, Greg. Once you get past those first set of guys, I'm looking for more of a PPR type player, whether you're in that type of league or not, just because that means you're getting more touches possibly. And I think we'll touch on that later with a couple of the sleepers we have late in our draft who can be PPR freaks and get you mad points even if you're not in a PPR league. Alex, do you agree with this going for the receiver type strategy, or are you looking for just somebody who will pound it up the middle as much as possible?
I guess I'm looking for consistency, whether it be through, pass catching or even getting decent yardage on the ground. I mean, this late in the draft, like Greg said, like these running backs you'd get later on in your league, later on in your draft. So, I mean, Reggie Bush, C.J. Spillers, those are guys I go after. Other people, are taking chances on Toby Gerhart from Jacksonville, and, he could end up doing really well here. But I think consistent players who get you consistent points throughout the year would be the route to go. So, because there's not going to be that much difference from a running back you pick up later in your draft and compared to a free agent you can get during the middle of the season. Does that make any sense what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you're getting consistency is the word there, and it's about how you want that consistency. When it comes to guys like the Reggie Bushes, for example, you're getting consistency in that he's getting touches. They may not be all runs, but you're getting a lot of catches as well. The touches is all that matters. Someone like an Alfred Morris, no, he's not going to get you catches out of the backfield, but he's going to get you 20 carries every game. You can't argue with that. So that's the main key for me, is just that they're getting consistent touches. I don't care how it happens. When you go down the list, I mean, you can look either way. Frank Gore, very consistent. Easily 20 carries per game. Not very many catches. That's fine. Chris Johnson, same thing. Not as many catches as you might like. Or you can go the complete opposite route. You got Shane Vereen, who will pop up on our list there. Pierre Thomas on our list there, of guys who will catch a lot of passes, but maybe not get as many rushes. Joig Bell you could even throw in there. So you have lots of different options that you can use. The main thing that I'm looking at this point, too, beyond whether it's rushes, carries, anything, my question is, who else is in that backfield with them? Do you have a running back by committee happening or not? And I think somebody like Rashad Jennings is actually a huge pick, because who else is in that backfield? David Wilson just had to make a very early retirement. Peyton Hillis was supposed to be the number 2. He's now banged up, and he's shown nothing in preseason. And the only other guy is the rookie, Andre Williams, from Boston College, and he apparently isn't very good at pass protection.
Yep.
Who else is going to be on that field?
Right, and the other thing, too, and you're hitting this, and I like your point here, Dotson, but the thing also you have to take a look at is the team. We were making the argument between the Minnesota Vikings and the Chicago Bears. You have to take a look at where Chris Johnson is with the New York Jets. And with Chris Johnson being with the New York Jets, he is the featured back now with the Jets. He's going to be with an offense basically run by Michael Vick. So with that said, we're looking at a possible Philadelphia redux, so to speak, with this offense. So we could actually perhaps anticipate Chris Johnson's numbers being similar to that of LaShawn McCoy's.
And that would be
Wow.
insane if that were to happen. And I mean, that's assuming that Vic wins the job, which many people think he will, but just as many say he won't either. So, I mean, a lot of things still need to be worked out. But either way, Chris Johnson as the feature back in New York is a very interesting happening here.
Right.
You can't go on past precedent, though, can you? Especially at running back, because you age so quickly. By the time you're 29, 30, your career as a running back is almost done. So, I mean, how do you look at a guy like, for example, Frank Gore, who's 31? What can you really expect from him?
Yeah, I kind of want to object to what you said. Remember, at age 31, Curtis Martin led the league in rushing. Thomas Jones was third, and both James Brooks and Fred Taylor rushed for more than 1,000 yards and averaged over 5 yards a carry. So, granted, I get what you're saying, but it's not like a rule that if you're 31, you're done. And
Yeah, well, what names did you just mention? You mentioned Fred Taylor. I mean, how many years ago was that?
Well, the point I'm trying to make, that it doesn't necessarily mean you're out. You know what I mean? So, granted, this is a different league, but I'm also letting you guys know that it's not some automatic disqualifier. You know, you could still be 31 and have a productive year. And I still think Frank Gore is going to be a decent round pick. I mean, it's crazy how Frank Gore's been, a top 10 running back for how long now? And now it's weird to see him in most fantasy rankings between the 25th and 30th spot. So if you're drafting late, I actually do give Frank Gore a chance.
Because he's the one who gets consistent touches, just like we said. And he did it last year at 30. I think you're right. He can do the same at 31. Fred Jackson last year had over 1,000 total yards as a 32-year-old, and he's by far the oldest, it says, they're saying here, in terms of running backs in the NFL. So you have lots of options there. It's all about, your preference. Do you trust the younger guy maybe to come in, but there's also the injury concern, or do you trust somebody who's done this for years and years to go? And I think either way, as long as you're confident with your pick, then there's really nothing that you can be worried about. Now, here's a really interesting guy, young, 23, went to a new team halfway through the season last year, and really, it seemed was a disappointment, mainly because he didn't get it into the end zone much. But still, though, he had almost 1,000 total yards, Trent Richardson, throughout the course of the year, and that's with switching teams and having pretty much no offensive line. Now the Colts have gone out there and they've made some changes. Does Richardson have a bounce-back year this year?
I think Richardson has some value. You just have to. He's definitely not an RB1. We all know that. I think he's more of a flex player. He's more of a player that would be more of a bench player and sort of a wait-and-see type guy. Where would I draft somebody like Trent Richardson? Probably the 13th or 14th round. He's got some value down there at the bottom, no doubt about it. I mean, yes, he will get you yards, but that's about all he's going to get you.
He's given you the opportunity because you know what he can do, and you're almost right. It's worth taking that shot on him. I'd probably go as high as, maybe round 9 or round 10 if you're getting into your backups at that point. You're still waiting on a quarterback. You're still waiting on a tight end. I would definitely go after Richardson because he can bounce right back into being a top 10 running back without too much difficulty. So I like that possibility late in the draft of going after somebody like Richardson. Now the question becomes, who would you rather go after? Someone like Richardson with that potential, or someone say like a couple guys right around him, a Joique Bell or a Shane Vereen, somebody who is a backup running back on his team but gets so many touches that he is almost equivalent to a starting running back. Which route would you go, Alex?
I think it depends what point in the draft you're at. If you're later in your draft, I probably go with potential because hopefully by that time you drafted enough running backs, or at least 2 or 3 to start. So at this point, I mean, look, Shane Vereen had 208 rushing yards last year and only 4 TDs. It's not like there's such a big gap between production. So I would probably go with potential because that's what happens. That's what happens in fantasy football. You get a handful of guys that jump out. So if it's the last few rounds of my draft, or maybe even in the middle too, I'd probably take a chance on someone like a Trent Richardson.
Very good, very good. One guy we didn't mention yet, we want to talk briefly about the rookies. Bishop Sankey comes in on our board at number 18, and a couple of the other rookies who are out there. Trey Mason comes in down in like the 30s to 40 range. After that, you got like Carlos Hyde, who's way down there, but he's got some upside. I guess the question to me would be, you can look at Jeremy Hill actually for the Bengals too. Are any of these guys worthy of drafting? I mean, Sankey for sure, because it looks like he's going right into the starting role. Any of these other guys that you're looking at saying he's a guy who could pull off a Le'Veon Bell or an Eddie Lacy type performance like they did last year?
I think it's too early to tell with some of these other guys. With Bishop Sankey, it may even be too early to tell, but with Bishop Sankey being the featured running back now in Tennessee, with CJ 2K now going to the Jets, Bishop Sankey would be one that I would take a little bit of a gamble on. And I would actually go as high as maybe the 7th round on a Bishop Sankey, to be honest with you, only because he is the featured back and he's got a lot to prove. These other guys, Trey Mason, here's a good example. You got a guy who's already featured in Zach Stacy. Okay? Is Trey Mason... I just don't see that happening, because now you're going to have a running back by committee now if he gets in there. Who's the running back by committee over there in Tennessee? There is none. It's just Bishop Sankey. So...
Yeah. The only thing that hurts Sankey is maybe Sean Green takes goal line carries, which, you know, you can deal with that in a fantasy league, especially in the way the leagues are set up now. I mean, another guy even you could look at, Terrence West, who's going out there with a very wide-open backfield in Cleveland. I mean, this kid from Townsend, he had 2,500 rushing yards last year. I mean, that's saying something. Who knows what could happen there? You have lots of possibilities, it sounds like, with some of these rookies. Maybe that late-round pick is worth picking up a Trey Mason or a Terrence West. You never know what could happen with any of these guys, or even Carlos Hyde, especially in a dynasty league, because it won't be long before Frank Gore is completely done, right?
He has a few more years in him. Well, I like what Greg said about Bishop Sankey. I think he hit the nail on the head here. I mean, just by default, him being the top back in Tennessee, you know, you got to give him a look. And compared to the other running backs where it'll probably be by committee, all the other rookies will probably get, third down and select, you know, chances to make plays. It's Bishop Sankey, just by his situation, merits, you know, being drafted. So it's not something I'm going to, like, dissect into that much. But Sankey's the guy you want to go after in terms of rookies. If you want to take a chance on a rookie, it's Bishop Sankey. Other than that, I'm not going to pick up any probably in the draft, maybe in free agency down the road.
Very good. All right, there are a couple of running backs who are in new places this year. Same face, new place. We talked briefly about Chris Johnson going to the Jets, and we think that he could be a solid performer because there's not too much up there to compete with him. Maybe a goal line carrier here getting knocked away by Chris Ivory, but not much of a difference there. Some of the other guys, just give me a yay or nay. Do you like him or not like him? Darren Sproles in Philadelphia.
Yay. I'm always
yay.
Even at 31, I think you're right. He still had over 70 catches each of the last 2 years. You can't really argue with that too much. How about Noshawn Moreno going from the Denver offense to the Miami offense?
It could go either way with me. I can see him being productive. I can also see him doing nothing just because it's Miami. So, I mean, I guess nay.
Let's put it this way. It depends on where you're at in the draft. You know, if you're getting into round 9 and 10 and you already have a good stable of players, yeah, I'd draft him to get him off the table.
Yeah, but I think Alex is more along the lines going to the Miami offense. It's a little bit scary, but you're exactly right, Greg. If he's still there, why not take the risk?
Right.
How about Mojo going out to Oakland, Maurice Jones-Drew?
Oh, no.
No. So many nays.
So many nays. Is it the injury concern? Is it the Oakland concern? What is it about it?
All the above.
No, I think that's pretty obvious there, ladies and gentlemen, that Maurice Jones-Drew not exactly the highest on our guys' priority list. So we're nay for Mojo. We're a little bit better on Moreno, but definitely still a go for Darren Sproles. Some new faces in new places, not too bad of an issue. The last thing I want to talk about tonight, gentlemen, are some late round sleepers. You're talking, ninth, 10th round and beyond, that people just don't think about and undervalue for one reason or another. And the top guy, by far, I see it in every single mock draft that I do, Pierre Thomas just drops way, 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 way too far down the draft board than I think is deserving. What do you think about the PPR gem and Pierre Thomas?
The way I look at it right now, Pierre Thomas, a.k.a. the PT Cruiser, has always fallen off the edge, only because of the fact that he's never been widely utilized in a consistent manner. I mean, he's always been that PPR guy. He's in every play. He's in every game, no doubt about it. But he gets overlooked rather quickly, no doubt about it, and it will happen again. It's just like that person that gets typecast in a certain role. They always look at that person as typecast in that type of role. PT Cruiser's typecast is that is the underachieving fantasy football player, when in fact he is a very strong player, somebody I think worthy to be picked up probably in the 6th or 7th round.
Well,
yeah, and he's dropping in the 8th or 9th round. What do you think, Alex?
Well, guys, I mean, he is a good running back. I think everyone knows he's a good running back, but it just isn't working out for him, whether it's his fault or just the way the cards are rolling. It's what he averages 520 rushing yards a year. Had 5 touchdowns last year, 2 touchdowns the year before. Well, I'm sure he's a talented running back. It's just not happening. Again, I don't know if it's his fault or not. It's just not happening. These are very, very pedestrian numbers at best. So.
But it's never happened for him, Alex.
That's the point. That's the point. Is it going to happen again for him next year? Probably not.
Well, now at age 29, and that's the risk right there. And that's just the way New Orleans, that's the way that they run. I mean, Pierre Thomas is in there. Mark Ingram is in there. You've had Darren Sproles in there. Tyree Robinson in there. It's running back by committee. I mean, that's the definition of it. Here's what I say, though. Last year, with the best pass-catching running back in the history of the NFL in Darren Sproles, in that running back by committee, Pierre Thomas still had 77 receptions. Now, Darren Sproles is gone. Who is going to make up for all the passes that Darren Sproles caught that's no longer there? 71 catches he had last year. That's got to go somewhere. Who's it going to go to? Tyree Robinson is going to get a few, but guess what? He didn't have a single catch last year. Mark Ingram, he had 7 catches last year. Who's going to catch these passes? Pierre Thomas, I kid you not, could hit 100 catches this year.
Well, go ahead.
No, I mean, I see him being like a Reggie Bush up there in Detroit. Same type of situation, no doubt about it.
Right. I can see easily him eclipsing 80, 90, maybe even 100 catches, because I don't see anybody else catching passes out of the backfield the entire year. And you're trying to take 140 catches between these two running backs and combine them into essentially one.
If it's a PPR league, then yeah, then that's a different story. But if it's just a normal, traditional, standard draft, I don't even think about them.
Hey, I'll still get the yardage. I'll take it even if I don't get points for that. But I guess that's just me. And hey, you know what? Ours isn't a PPR league, so when I draft them and you beat me in the league, then you can say you told me so, I guess. The other guy who I'm really looking at huge, and somebody who I think that players, managers, coaches all over the world, all over the U.S. Doing fantasy football and just watching football as a fan are going to notice how good this guy really is. Bernard Pierce, he's going to get his shot first 2 weeks of the year with the Ray Rice suspension, and in my mind, I think he's going to maintain, if not the full starting load, I think he's going to at least get 50% of the touches there, even once Ray Rice is back. What do you think of Bernard Pierce?
Oh, I like Bernard Pierce. I think this guy, definitely an upswing on this thing, and don't be surprised that Ray Rice just goes away very, very unceremoniously.
Yeah, the fact that, Rice is suspended and everything he's going through does increase Bernard Pierce's value tremendously. So, in a way, I don't think Bernard Pierce should thank Ray Rice for what he's done, but he definitely kind of fell into a good situation in the most unfortunate way, of course. But Bernard Pierce is definitely someone you keep an eye on, at least for the first few weeks of the season.
You know,
Yeah, I'm almost worth picking him up, especially if you try one of the draft strategies where you go a little bit lighter on the running back. He's worth drafting even maybe a round earlier than your cheat sheets may project them, just because of the fact that you know you have 2 starting weeks with him for sure, and possibly more after that. It's worth it right there to try to get those 2 wins early in the year at that value. It could be a huge dividend come playoff time, especially if you work the waiver wire right. So there's lots of different ways that you can use that draft strategy to your advantage.
actually, somebody who we really haven't talked a whole lot about, and who is a big sleeper as far as I'm concerned, and a sleeper which really shouldn't be, is Ryan Matthews.
Why does he always end up being overlooked? He doesn't put up the gaudy numbers, but I don't know. What is it about him that really sticks out?
I mean, I think with Ryan Matthews.
Well, I mean, go ahead, go ahead.
Go ahead. No. Go ahead. I mean, you're probably going to say the same thing I am. So go ahead.
I kind of just think it seems to be bad luck almost. I mean, you look at his stats the last 3 years, hovering around 1,000. Last year he had close to 1,300 yards rushing. That's not bad. It's just, I think, just kind of the situation he's into. A lot of people don't know how to feel about the Chargers, who I swear seem to be the most hot and cold team. It's just like, it's like there's a stigma about him. You're afraid to touch him almost. I mean, just right out the back, just something was wrong with him. There's always just some weird thing going on with him. So.
Exactly. And that's the thing. I think when he first entered the league back in 2011, he was a big bust and a big disappointment. Even though he had 1,091 rushing yards, at the beginning of the season, he was just non-existent. I think his picture was on milk cartons. But, and this is the big but in the room now, Ryan Matthews is I mean, the Chargers have no plans to lighten his workload at all. He is the featured back out there in San Diego, and he has one of the most dynamic quarterbacks under center in Phillip Rivers, who will utilize this guy. And this guy is also a very, very good pass-catching running back.
Well, let me debunk you on a couple of those things there, Greg. The first part that I see about him that I don't like is the fact that there is no consistency whatsoever. You're talking 700 yards, then 1,000 yards, 700 yards, then 1,200 yards. Which guy are we going to get? The 7 touchdowns the one year, 6 the next year, 1 the following year, and then 6 again. What type of guy do we expect? And then even more than that, yes, he is a good pass catcher, but listen to his receptions the last 3 years. 50 catches in 2011, 40 in 2012, only 20 in 2013. The catches are going down. Now, is that a system thing, or is that a Ryan Matthews thing, or is that a Phillip Rivers thing? Who knows? I'm a little bit pessimistic when it comes to that, just because of the fact of I don't know what guy to expect. And also, last year is the first year that he went a full 16-game season. He is a big injury risk. I'm keeping Ryan Matthews as far away from my team as possible.
But, and here, once again, the big but in the room. Here we are. Round 9, round 10. Ryan Matthews is still lurking on the boards. Do you take that risk? Or do you go after somebody like somebody like a Trent Richardson or a...
It depends how late, too. Like I said earlier, I like consistency, but if it's so far late in the draft.
If I'm drafting for a starter, I'm staying away from Ryan Matthews. If I'm getting a flex player or a bench guy at that point, then yeah, maybe I would take a swing at a Ryan Matthews. The thing for me is that by the time I'd be looking for flex players and bench players, Ryan Matthews is long gone because somebody drafted him 5 rounds earlier than he should have.
That's true. That's true.
Are there any other sleepers out there that really, catch your eye as somebody that maybe we should be looking at?
Well, you have Stephon Ridley.
Say, we didn't mention Ridley. I mean, he flies on the radar. We can talk about him.
I don't know. I mean, actually, I don't know if you'd say that he'd be a sleeper, but you do kind of want to look at LeGarrette Blount, considering how I swear every Steeler gets injured on the team, at least once during the year, so...
No, and I say Stephon Ridley is a sleeper because with LeGarrette Blount's departure up in New England, coming to Pittsburgh, who's the feature back now? It's Ridley.
Yeah, Ridley, he'll get you now, especially not losing goal line carries. It's not a three-headed monster, just a two-headed monster between him and Vereen's not going to take the rushes, just the catches. So I think Ridley definitely is somebody that flies under the radar, and it feels like he's been there forever, but he's only 25, so that's not a bad pick at all. Now, you mentioned Blount. Alex, you're a fan of LeGarrette Blount a little bit?
Yeah, again, I mean, like I said, it seems like every starting player for the Steelers get hurt at least once during the year. So, if, let's say, Bell goes down, he's going to be next in line, LeGarrette Blount. LeGarrette Blount would do a great job, especially if the Steelers line holds up. I actually really do like LeGarrette Blount. So,
And like we said earlier, too, he could be starting.
exactly. So if he gets the shot, then yeah, he'd be a sleeper pick, if that makes any sense. If he gets the opportunity, he will make the most out of it.
Well, that does it. That's the complete recap and complete analysis of the running backs in the NFL for fantasy football. For James, the Value Man Dotson, and Alex the Saint Delaverson, I am the Mad Scientist. Catch us next time when we go over wide receivers.